Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to IP Day's Webinar Wednesday. Today, we're going to talk about From Basic to Impact, the Integrated Education and Training, IET Blueprint. Whether you're here just starting your journey and building your knowledge of IET, or you're coming back to get a refresher, or maybe you're circling back because you need to expand on your IET knowledge or rebuild a program that may need a reboot, this is a place for you, and we're excited you're here. I want to introduce myself. I'm Lori Benjamin. I'm one of the IPDAY IET subject matter experts, and I'm currently the director of Brevard Adult and Community Education.
And I'm Eric Kohler. I'm an IPDAY IET subject matter expert as well, and I am the assistant director at Brevard Adult and Community Education. So a couple of things to remember. If you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A option. Attendees' microphones will be muted, and you're only in listen mode only. Today's presentation is being recorded. It will be archived and available on the IPDAY website within 48 hours.
So we have an agenda for you, and it is broken down in 3 components. I will go over them: layering the foundation, program planning, and design. And under that, we'll go through explicit areas of understanding to start with. Number 2 is driving implementation. And within that area, we're going to talk about the execution of IETs and the operations. And then in level 3, we're going to talk about measuring the impact of your evaluation. Because as we're here, we're going to go through a seamless path of how you start to finish can begin with IET and go from your basic understanding to a program that impacts the lives, and it will be a ending model of continuous improvement. Something that you will see along the way and hear from us, it is something that is an area of continuous improvement. But we will start from the basics of understanding IET framework, identifying target populations and market needs, establish a career pathway goal and partnerships, design education component. We're going to talk about funding sources. Under number 2, as we've discussed, we're going to show you a little bit about the application of the IET process. We're going to talk about the importance of educating your faculty and staff. We're going to then run through what recruitment and screening looks like in an IET process. We're going to talk about student retention because that's a very, very important piece, and we will touch on that. And under measuring impact, we'll talk about program evaluation.
All right, so our first section will be laying the foundation, program planning, and design.
So the first thing we're going to do is talk about what IET is and what it is not. And many people get sometimes confused about that because a program that integrates adult education and workforce training, it seems very simplistic. And what it's telling you is it is a workforce program that is designed to help students work on their academic skill set through the contextualized learning of whatever skill set it is. So this is something that is happening at the same time. And that is what identifies it as an IET. So what is not an IET? A standalone language acquisition class, as it says in the slides. What does that mean? So when we think of adult education and you were to walk into an ESOL learning class and you see students working on language acquisition, that is not an IET. If you were to walk in a class that is either working on adult high school or GED and it is a solely academic class, even if there are wraparound services and the students are working in small groups, but if you are only solely working on the academics, that is also not an IET. This is one that tends to confuse people, but this is also not an IET. A workforce or training without the embedded academics. So when you think of that, you may think of a workforce training. An example would be somebody takes a CPR class. That's to get a certification for CPR. They just go to it. It's almost like a professional learning experience, but there's no academic wraparound in there. There's no support. It is just taking a career training class. That is not an IET. So as you've heard, it seems simple, but now we've broken it down for those of you who may not have experience with IET. Please understand when you think of IET, integration is the key.
So now you understand a little bit about what or what not an IET is. we need to focus on how to define that target population to make your IET program successful. You can begin with the labor market using regional workforce data and employer input. Here at Brevard Adult Education, we collaborate with our local municipalities, workforce boards, chambers, community organizations. We create our own community events to bring people in to educate them about the programs we have. The second step would be focus on population with limited access to training. So students, as like Ms. Benja was mentioning, students that don't have their GED or their high school diploma yet. So you're building those skills in while trying to get a industry credential. Also, our English language learners, they could be working on their workforce credentialing while learning the English language. So they're moving forward, learning the language, finding better jobs, upscaling themselves, and then matching skill gaps to career pathways. And I mean, like, so people that do already are in a career, but maybe need to upskill themselves in some more industry certifications. So identify those areas and to get more employers on board with the skills that we offer and that you can offer with the industry certs that are in demand and are always continually changing. So you always want to make sure you're keeping up with the changing workforce and providing that education to the individuals.
So thank you, Mr. Kohler. And when you're defining the population that we've talked about, one of the major things that comes first is looking at your market needs. Like Mr. Kohler said, the industry needs of your workforce is changing rapidly. And your first step to really be a successful person to learn about IET is to understand that nobody works in isolation. So as you see from this great diagram we have here, in the middle, you have our adult education provider. That's us. What we do, that is our skill set. We do help students with academics. We have help them get either their language acquisition, their high school diplomas, the GED, that is also a recognized diploma in the state of Florida. But what else for these people? And so we become the educational provider, and then we're wrapping with other community organizations. You may have chambers, you may have local municipalities, you may have all kinds of events that need support with workforce, but they don't know where they can get that educational piece for the students. Maybe they're need to be upskills, maybe they're returning to work as veterans. So those organizations are the people that you need to wrap around with. And then what does the supply chain need, like we talked about? Who are your employers in your area and what are they looking for? They may have a workforce already, but their workforce does not have the skill set that they need. So you, as the adult education provider, may be doing things two ways. You may be bringing students into your organization and giving them the skill set and the workforce training in your organization to then help them attain employment. Or you may be going to an employer, they may be providing you the space, and they may be saying to you, I have this group of learners in, maybe it's a manufacturing company, and I need to work on their language acquisition so that they can move up in this employment opportunity here at our employment, and I need to have growth within my company. So you may be going in there, providing the teacher, providing the support. So you also have to have a level of flexibility when you're looking at market needs, because it isn't just a one and done model. It's a model that works for your community, and it is a model that may be different for each community that I have, whether it be a rural community, an inner city community, largely populated community. Those things all are very important when you're talking about market needs. You're also wanting to listen to your stakeholders, because your stakeholders are the ones that are going to buy into your program. And that is going to give you that continuous enrollment to continue the longevity for your programs. So that's a little things that you need to think about with market needs. But as you see in the illustration, it's definitely a cycle that is continuous and something that's always changing.
Okay, so you know what an IET is, you know what the market needs are. So how do we design the education component? So here's four good topics. You align your academic skills with your career pathways, contextualize instruction, embed employability skills, and build towards those credentials that we were talking about. So when you align your academic skills with the career pathway, you're integrating the reading, the math, and the digital literacy skills for that target population. You use real world materials such as job forms, manuals, charts, accident reports, anything that would be with that industry that they would have to see on a daily basis. These real world materials help them engage a lot more in the material itself. Contextualized instruction. So you're teaching skills such as like dosage calculations for healthcare, reading blueprints for construction math, how to read a tape measure. These are the skills that you would continually want to integrate while they're transferable to getting your GED in math, but it's also transferable how to build a house. Ensure the lessons that you are integrating are reflected of those career pathways that you have chosen. Embed employability skills. A lot of people complain that a lot of people don't have the soft skills anymore. So make sure your resume building and how to interact in the workplace, how to dismantle a disagreement in the workplace, workplace etiquette. Those should all be in part of your curriculum. And then all these combined are requirements for the industry cert. So some will be transferable between different jobs, but make sure you're targeting specifically for the industry cert. You don't want to do medical dosage if you're trying to teach logistics. So make sure you're using real world situations for that integration.
So I know every time people are thinking about IETs, and this is probably one of the most difficult pieces that kind of get people stunted in where do you go? Um, where do you get the funding? So, what are your funding sources? The first one here, I don't think I have to tell anyone what it is, but we will talk about it. And obviously, it's one that's got a lot of impact on IET. Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, we all know that's WIOA. That is a workforce funding, and that is really where a lot of our funding can come from IEDs. That is the money that will come down, starts federally, and then would come down from the state that would allow us to build our IET programs and help fund the materials and supplies and labor that we need for those. But we also have state and local grants. What I will tell you is the state grants, there's the ones we know about, but there's multiple grants that may come up that you have opportunities for. Some of you might be familiar with the Pathways to Career Opportunities grant, and you may be thinking, well, how does that have to do with adult education? Well, it absolutely does. It would help you build programs that you could integrate as an IET. In Brevard Adult and Community Education, we have had some Pathways to Career Opportunity grants to build our IET programs because we built pre-apprenticeship programs that are pre-apprenticeship IETs. That is very interesting and unique way to build an IET, but it really helps with longevity and it also allows for some funding sources. Local grants. A lot of people don't know where to look for them. And then a lot of times people look at a local grant and they think that's a lot of work for a small outcome. But what we'll tell you is that no, you can't have that mindset if you are looking to learn and build with IETs. Every dollar is going to help you. There may be local grants for $500, but imagine that you got 10 of them. Look at the funding sources you're going to get. And a lot of times that money is unrestricted in those local grants. They just want to give it to you for your program. So a lot of times you can use it for a lot of things that you can't get funded. And that helps your IETs go a very long way. I really make sure that any grant that we do qualify for, we write for it. It's also a great opportunity to build capacity within your organization. I have really taught many of my staff how to write grants. Many organizations may have your own grant writers, and that's great, but it's a skill set that really should be part of people that are working in the areas of IET. Then we'll talk about the master credential list. And some of you who may not be in this space yet may wonder how the master credential list has anything to do with funding. Oh, it has everything to do with funding. Many of the IETs that you are building, the industry certifications, if they do sit on that master credential list, then you get funding for that. Depending on what is agreed upon in the state budget, that money will be allocated to you twice a year. If you receive the industry certifications and they were on the master credential list, that is more money that will come back into your program. And then if you are a Perkins funded opportunity there that will help for you with your career technical education or post-secondary education programs that you may have aligned with your IET. Private sector support. What does that mean? That really means partnerships. Partnerships and funding. And another thing that's going to sound maybe strange to some, but other people will like, yes, that's it. Funding doesn't necessarily have to be monetary money. It can be space. It can be things. It can be donations. It could be things that can help. And so that's called in-kind donations. Maybe someone's partnering with you and they're going to give you space. Maybe someone's partnering with you and they're going to give you a instructor. Those things are going to be fundamental also to your IET program. And so that's something you need to take into consideration as well. So that brings me to everything we've just talked about. And let's talk about braided funding. What is it? It seems kind of obscure, and many times people don't know what that means, but it means just what it means. When you think of a braid, like someone braids their hair, you intertwine things together and you make one great, nice braid. Braided funding is meaning that each organization may have different opportunities towards funding, but what they're trying to get is maybe the same outcome. And many organizations, whether it's your workforce funds or your career sources or your community organizations, or maybe even your local municipalities, the outcome is always workforce and getting people back to work and getting them upskilled. And so a lot of times an IET program you build may support multiple programs together, and everybody may be able to fund one piece of the pie per se. So don't count braided funding out. And really the best way to make braided funding and the private sector funding work well, you have to always have an MOU. So a lot of times you have these agreements and you have discussions and you collaborate and everyone is on board. But to make it work and then to have accountability, you definitely have to have an MOU. So as you're thinking about those things, remember that you have to think about longevity. So you also will have to be thinking about those things when you're talking about funding sources.
All right, so we'd like to take a minute to see if anyone in the audience would have any other ideas that Ms. Benjamin didn't mention. So what funding sources have worked for your agency? So if you just scan the QR there, it should pop up here in the word cloud and we can look at them all together and see if there's anything new.
And as you're doing that, I'll give you an example of, and you may put it in the chat, but like just recently, we have a small organization in Brevard Adult Community Education, and it's in our community, and it's called the 922 Crew. And so we bring about a bunch of different non-for-profit and local agencies together to solve a problem, basically. And just recently, one of our faith-based organizations mentioned they had a significant amount of money that was being set aside and that they were going to be giving out grants, and they were $1,000 grants. And basically you just had to give them a proposal of what you wanted to do with that grant. So we did it, of course, and we got the money. And so now that gives us $1,000 more that we can now put towards students' GED fees. And as we know, trying to pay for student tests and those kind of things sometimes are difficult. And that is why the little things can go even farther. We also had reached out from an organization with a partnership that actually got a grant and they got their codes to pay for GED tests. So they had the codes, but they don't have access to the students. And so they reached out to us and said, we've been writing a grant for this because we want to get more students in our organization get their GEDs, but we have multiple codes and we'd like to partner with you guys. So that just happened for us. That wasn't monetary in hand, but now we have opportunities for our students to sit for the test at no fee.
All right, so we're having an issue with the QR code. So I just put in the chat box if you want to add any funding sources to the chat box, and then we can have a running record of that.
We apologize for that. As we know, technology can be silly. We did check this and it did work because as you see, we started you off and we put the first one on there to just talk about sometimes if you go and look under one subject, you can get funding. And when we're talking about AG, I gave you some examples of getting GED funding that can absolutely help your students feel more comfortable to sustain their IET program.
And we did have Brad Bishop. He did say that local Kiwanis Club is a fundraiser to benefit student scholarships like GED vouchers and licensure exam fees.
Thank you for sharing, Brad. I'm glad that you are tapping into that resource. That is something that it's been on my list, and we started, and in our county is very long, about 76 miles, and we went to a few meetings, but that is very true. Kiwanis clubs have funds to give, so very good.
All right, we'll move forward. So before I move into the next section, driving implementation, is there any questions that you would like to pop into the chat box that we can address before we're moving into the next section?
And I see in the chat, Eric, Brad also mentioned the Rotary clubs, and he is not wrong. That is one that we have gone and done presentations at, and they are a great resource. So thank you, Brad, for sharing that as well.
I'd like to know if anyone else works IET in corrections, as it's difficult to find willing donors for incarcerated adults.
Well, actually, we do work with corrections as well, and we have built our first IET in our reentry program, and that is where we were doing logistics. And so we work with an organization called Operation New Hope. So Operation New Hope will work with reentry students as well as incarcerated students getting out, and there's usually source funding from them and resources, and they're located around the state of Florida. So that is a resource that you could tap into and look at, and we did partner with them as well. As for in corrections doing an IET, we are going to be starting a customer service IET within corrections, and what we've noticed is multiple agencies that have jobs that are for online, they cannot keep those funded. So you might, but we want to be reaching out and looking at your IETs in that capacity, because sometimes it's based on the IET that you're choosing of how you can get support. Okay, so as you can see now, we were just looking at, as Eric said, how do we drive the implementation? And here's where, as we say, the rubber meets the road. As you see this page right now, this is absolutely on the IPDAY portal, and this is the IET Assistance Center. It looks just like this. This is the page you go to. They have the IET Information Starting Guide. They have the IET Program Catalog, and this is where you do your IET request application. So how you will move forward to apply for IET happens on this page. So get to know this page, and also get to know if you don't already know it well, please get to know the IPDAY portal. It's a plethora of knowledge, but this page has to become your best friend if you are going to move forward on the journey of IETs. There is a highlighting, there are many IETs in the catalog. That's the thing we want to say right here. No longer do you have to recreate the wheel during the beginning years of IET. It was a very interesting process, and those of us who got into it really got into it, and we built and we learned and we created activities. Well, those people's IETs now sit in this portal, and there's many there that are already there that you can take from the catalog and make them your own for your program. When you're talking about single set of learning objectives, some of you may know that term and some of you may not if you have not started an IET. But if you go in the information start guide, you'll be able to figure out that there. And those single set of learning objectives are what is existing in the IET program catalog, because that gives you your framework to build your IET. You're going to hear about a program of study, and that goes from you have your single set of learning objectives and what does it look like in your program. That's where you're going to have your sequence of your instruction, where you're going to show how you start and how you end. It's going to talk about your credentialing attainment, and it's going to show you how you transition from employment to further education. So program of study is something that you're going to become comfortable with. And the details in the instructional flow, all of that sits in your IET information starting guides. It's going to go through what kind of model you have. As you're looking through the IET catalog, different organizations have different models. Maybe they have a one teacher model. Maybe they have a co-teaching model, an occupational teacher with an academic teacher that teach simultaneously in the classroom. Sometimes it's broken up. You have the ability to do whatever you want. Even if the IET in the catalog has the one teacher model and you have a better idea for two, you can still take all the information and make it your own. But we just wanted to showcase this page and understand that this is somewhere you're going to have to become familiar with as you're creating new IETs, as you're reviewing IETs you have. I did want to share if there are IETs that are not there, that you, before you go and write, phone a friend. You know, there's all of us around the state. We all know a lot of each other's who've met in many professional development settings. Eric and I are very comfortable for you to reach out to us. We did mention pre-apprenticeship IETs. Some of them may be in the portal and some of them may not, because we created them at least almost 4 years ago now. So we have the documents and we would also be willing to share. And I know that people within the state are willing to share, because I did that. I asked other organizations to share their single set of learning objectives or their programs of study with us so that we could make them their own. So do not feel that you have to do this all on your own, and understand that we want IET to be strong across the state of Florida. And that's why we have the support of IPDA, and that's why you have the support of your colleagues. So that's why we share this page. So hopefully it doesn't seem difficult or scary to you, but you can always reach out for support.
All right, so once you get your IET going or submitted, you want to educate your faculty and staff. So if it's your first one or you're trying to add more, just remind them why IETs matter. IETs help learners earn their credential faster while obtaining academic skills as well. It also is supported by WIOA and Florida's Get There by 30 initiative. So it's very important that they understand that we're not making the students do more. They're getting more, but at the same time. And then you're explaining your faculty roles. So your CTE teacher will be very knowledgeable in their trade. And then your instructional IET teacher is very good with the pedagogy of teaching. But collaborating them together and explaining what each role is and how they could benefit each other to make the students be more successful in that program is very important. And then professional development. Like Ms. Benjamin said, IPDA, Florida Department of Education, they put on several webinars just like this one to help educate. And when you see the names on there, just reach out to anyone on those front pages when they introduce themselves. We all try to do the best for our students and our communities, and just reaching out to all of us. If they don't know the answer, someone will, and they'll guide you in the right direction. So always seek professional development. And if you don't know where to start, just reach out to someone. And also create an IET PLC. This helps that co-teaching, collaboration, contextualized instruction between your CTE teacher and your academic teacher, your IET teacher. It helps with team planning. And then they can also help share what's working with their IET and what's not working. And it might give another idea in a whole different curriculum pathway, but you're trying to give that academic support. So that could go across several different platforms. So just having that PLC where they can talk, engage, and collaborate is very important. And making sure you're addressing any concerns of the faculty and staff and just addressing those and moving forward.
So now you've educated your faculty, you've gotten buy-in, and now we are to the process of how do you get the students? How do you recruit them? How do you screen them? What do you do? And this illustration right here, I think really brings us on another, as you're starting to see, it's a pattern. When we talked about a blueprint, we weren't kidding. It is a continuous cycle. It may be cyclical, but there is a process, and knowing your systems is going to be a way that you do well. The first thing you have to do is know your audience. So you need to create some kind of tool, whether it is a online, whether it is pencil, paper, whatever it is, a set of questions, a plan. Know who you want in your audience for your RIT and what you're looking for. Is it going to be cohort based? Is it going to be open enrollment? Are you only going to have language learners? Is it going to be mixed? Is it going to be a day cohort? Is it going to be an evening cohort? What are you trying to get? You're going to focus on your populations after you know your audience, and you're going to use the community to help you get these students. This is the biggest piece that everyone falls short or they get stuck. So recruitment and retention is everyone's job. Maybe your organization has the funding that you can have someone that focuses on recruitment and retention, but in most organizations in the small rural areas and many, there may not be a funding source for that. So how can it be everyone's job? Well, first of all, know all the things that are in your community and be getting reminders, whether it's chamber events, whether it's local tabletops for any non-for-profit in your area, any event that's drawing workforce together or drawing the community out. Use your local school district or your events in your community. We go to organizations in Brevard Adult and Community Education that people wouldn't even think about. If there's a festival in town, if there's an art fair, if there's anything that's happening, if there's a car show, every place that we can and they allow us to have a table, we're there. And we're generating interest and we're telling them what our program's about. It not only generates interest towards your students, but it also can generate interest to find you the right pathway to a professional to teach the class in those places. People come up, you have conversations, but it can't be a one and done. You need to be good with social media. You need to be using social media all the time to inform and also answer questions. And it needs to be more than one person that's paying attention to the social media. You're doing it professionally, and then you should be sharing out amongst your teams. Many of us are on LinkedIn personally, but are you on LinkedIn as an organization? Obviously, you can see IPDA on LinkedIn. You see many professional organizations on LinkedIn. I see many of my colleagues on LinkedIn, but I don't see a lot of the organizations LinkedIn. And businesses are looking at those. They will reach out to you. You've done all that, and now you're ready to screen your applicants. What are you looking for? What are the questions you're going to ask? Do you talk about punctuality? Do you talk about transportation and ability to get to the job? Do you talk about childcare and all the wraparound things that are available or that they have issues? Do you share with them what all your expectations are up front to make sure it's a fit for them? And then if it is a language learning IET, what leveling do you want for that program based on the contextualized reading? What wraparounds do you have and where do you feel that these students can be successful? That's really, really important. And when it talks about information sessions, your orientation when you're ready to start that IET, it needs to be seamless. It needs to be an in-person experience if possible. That works the best. That's not saying that you can't do one with someone later, but if your students can't come to your orientation and lean in enough to be there, that's going to be an indicator if they're ready to be part of an IET program. That could be anywhere from 16 weeks to 9 months, depending on what kind of IET program they've created. And some may even be longer if it's a career certificate IET program. Some of the ones we have in automotive, they're making a commitment to up to 2 years. So you need to really look at the orientation to judge the readiness of the population that you're choosing. All that being said, this is their class and this is the teacher that you've chosen's class. You need to be flexible and you need to work around the schedule of the availability of the teacher and then try to offer multiple cohorts with different times a day if you can find the teachers for it and if you have the funding. That is what we have been doing here, and we've found success in that area. But the calendars that Eric makes are very, very explicit. They are color coded. They tell them everything that is expected of them from the start date, from the days they have off, from the days that we're expecting them to test, from anything that could be anything that they know. And then they have multiple ways to reach out to someone. Now you've provided them the scheduling, but do they know how to get a hold of someone if they need something? And it needs to be multiple ways to get a hold of someone. When you're educating your faculty, like we talked about before, that is really important because your academic scheduling isn't just on one person. You have the scheduler, but does your secretary know the schedule if somebody calls in to ask about your IET? If the phone rings to somebody else within your organization, can they get them to the right place, and have they seen this schedule so that they can at least answer a question about a start date? These are little details, but they go a long way in your recruitment and your screening of students. And then you're going to provide multiple opportunities for the student. You are going to have that entry level assessment test to assess learning, and that's the basic skills learning. And then you also are going to post test those students. There are many options for those tests. All of you are aware, some of you may use TABE, some of you may use CASAS goals. We here at Brevard Adult and Community Education, in our particular program, we use ACT work keys, and we just started using it, and we only use it for our IET programs because we believe that we want to get a baseline that is based on workforce and that does some competency skills based on what they need to learn to be on the job. And we feel that it is a little more aligned. We just started using it, so we don't have outcomes yet, but so far it's favorable, and our students have seemed to feel very comfortable with the exams. And what we do is our students, after the orientation, they do start their program. The next class is their class to do their assessment. So we don't want to get in the place of scheduling it. We know some organizations just have students schedule testing and come in, and that can work. But we believe to make a cohort successful, it really needs to be scheduled into your calendar to make sure that it gets done. And the last step to keep your students and to recruit and screen is, now that you have all this, do you know that you've created the right class and you've tailored the decisions for the class based on the students that you have? That goes back to where Eric says you've recruited, you screened the students, you have that group of students. Now you're going to go back and get with your professional learning community for IET and figure out what this cohort needs for this IET to be successful. Because although the contextualized occupational skill class is the same cohort to cohort and the curriculum is the same, your learners are going to be different every single time. And it can't just be teaching to the curriculum. You're teaching to these students. That is the difference for IET.
And we did have a question earlier about accessing the paperwork. If you're talking about the IET application, I believe that opens up. So the applications open up in December for the January cohort, and then they have another window that opens up in March for your after July 1 cohort. So that, if that's what you're referring to, that's when the application opens up. Right. So moving forward to student retention, this kind of goes, hand in hand with what Ms. Benjamin was just talking about. About building strong relationships and getting the students in and developing things that are, for what people need and want. So starting day one, building that relationship, knowing who those students are, what their goals are, identifying what their challenges are, trying to meet them, halfway on getting them support to get to class or anything else that's happening in their life that would be deterring them from showing up to class. The easiest way to do that is just consistent communication and being open with your communication. Don't make promises that you can't keep, and just be honest with them. But just if they're asking a question, make sure you reach out back to them as soon as you can, so they don't feel like they're left hanging there for like they don't care, because we do care. We will all get busy, but just making sure consistent communication with them. And then connecting the learners to their career goals. So like for our pre-apprenticeship, we do a pre-screen. One of the questions I ask is, why are you choosing this career pathway? And if they give you an explanation of something that doesn't really align with that, but you have another program, you're like, have you thought about this? So that would create that retention for that student, because some students might pick something thinking that's what they want, but when they start talking to you and explaining to you about what they want, like, have you thought of this? So that's another way to retain those students. Then use like world examples. So when we have our classes going, we bring in people from the community, also employers, to speak to our students. Those help those students see like those are jobs that are out there when I get done. These are real people. These are not just these credentials out there that means nothing to no one. So we have people speak to our students. Then we have a thing called Career Live on Thursdays that we have all kinds of people for an hour on Thursdays to speak to all of our students, not just our IET teachers, our students, but all of our students on our campus, to let them know what's available out there for employment, what credentials that we are offering that will align with what those industries are offering. Offer wraparound support if you can, offer extra tutoring, or if you know if a student couldn't make it to a certain campus that day, does your agency have some sort of transportation that can help support them to get them to your class? Or maybe, for temporary purpose, have an e-learning section. So if someone can't make it for a couple of days, they can still come to that class. Just try to meet all your students in the middle to make sure they achieve what they're setting out for our community. And that's part of that whole flexibility as well. Just setting schedules, listening to what students do. Maybe you have a whole cohort of students that can only make it at night. Try to make a night cohort. Or if you can only have a whole set that can only make it during the day, make a day cohort. Just listen to your students to meet them where they are to be successful. Encourage the cohort model. So like our pre-apprenticeships are 6 months and 9 months. Once the class starts, they're together for that 6 months. They're together for that 9 months. So they do their projects together. And once that class goes, they're all about supporting. They'll text each other like, where are you at? They kind of help retain your students as well with that model. And then address barriers proactively. Again, in our pre-screen, I'm like, this class is 9 months. It's 185 hours. What's going to prevent you to be able to complete this, and what can we do to help you so you can be successful? Just being proactive when you're talking to the students. And early inventions always help reduce dropouts and performance slips. So just open communication and try to meet them where you can.
Eric, I think we have another question for in the chat that they're asking about. She said, I mean the ones already approved. So I'm thinking she's meaning what's in the program catalog.
Yeah, so if you go there on the IET catalog where it says view catalog, not in our PowerPoint, that's not a hot link. But if you actually go to IPDA's website and for the IET assistance, if you click on view catalog, you can pick counties, you can pick specific programs in that catalog. You're on the site. Okay. I will let IPDA know that clicker is not working.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions? I would like to pause before moving into the next section of measuring impact, evaluations, and continuous improvement. Any other questions that we can address for you from our last section or the previous section if it just came to you? All right, Ms. Benjamin, I think we can move forward. Oh,
You have a
all
question?
right, so IPDA just put a direct link in there for their program catalog. Thank you, IPDA.
Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to measuring impact, and that is you've gone through the blueprint, you've come around, and now we're going to talk about program evaluation. So what is that? It's measuring learner outcomes, evaluating instructional integration, analyzing your student retention and completion, reviewing your employers and your partnership engagement, and using your data for continuous improvement. So let's talk about this. Measuring learner outcomes. Many of us know how to do that. You know that the stuff that you have to do for the NRS table, you know the times that you are in compliance through our state organizations. But do you have a system to measure your learner outcomes yourself? Are you creating an internal tracking credential attainment model? Are you paying attention to students that are getting employed? There is data, and let's remember that it's lagged, but your goal to really be able to create an environment of program evaluation is you have to measure your learner outcomes. You have to create an experience with your students that, do you still have an email or phone number to track them afterwards? Do you create in the beginning a student exit survey to make sure that you get their most updated information before they leave so that you can check in 6 months, in a year? Do you keep track on, maybe you create a Microsoft Excel sheet with when they get their industry credential, but are you tracking? For us, it would be, did they join an apprenticeship? After apprenticeship, we have that paperwork. Did they go into the workforce? Did they keep that job? For how much time? Those are things you really do need to keep in track of measurement learning outcomes that a lot of times you don't think about. But if you are to ensure longevity of your IET program and sustainability, those are things that you need to think about in the beginning. You may not have an answer of how to do it from day one of your first IET, but it's something that you absolutely need to think about. Then you're going to look at, what is the instruction and integration of the instruction right? Do you have the right academic skill sets within it to support that contextual learning and that occupational skill? What are you doing for your employability skills? For us, our employability skills is something that's embedded, and we don't have to create more programs of study because we're using Florida Ready to Work. If you're not aware of something, we have a Florida Ready to Work, which is a state approved soft skills, employability skills. It has multiple options. It is free to us in Florida. So there is a resource that you could use to make sure that you're really integrating your technical training and blending it and making sure that you have your soft skills. And as you're analyzing your student retention and completion, is it increasing? Do you have cohorts that fall off at a certain time? Do you see students drop off at a certain time? Do you see student success at different times of the year over others? Are your day cohorts doing better than your evening cohorts? All of these things are very important to look at and analyze why. Your why may change from semester to semester. So just analyzing it the first semester and thinking that's working, like you figured out the cherry on top, and then all of a sudden you're like, where'd all the students go? You need to figure it out. Is it an instructor issue? Sometimes those are hard conversations. But if the instructor is not getting outcomes and it's happening multiple cohorts, you need to reevaluate who your instructor is. Because if you remember, the IET is created for students. It is not created for an instructor's position. It's created so that students become workforce ready. Review your employer partnerships and your engagements. Make sure that what you agreed upon, that they're doing for you. And how can they continue to lean in a little more as they're a partner longer? What you get from them in the beginning, and then your outcomes get better and you start giving them the students that they need, how are they leaning back into you and how are they helping you more? And be open to ask those questions to them, and be open to ask. The worst thing they can say is no, but you know what? That constant communication and collaboration brings in new partners and also strengthens the partners that you have. Creating, yeah, PLC is great. We have advisory board committees for our pre-apprenticeship IETs and our career certificate IETs. And that brings our employers and our partnership engagement together at least standardly, at least once or twice a year. So that helps. And then obviously, as you set your goals for yourself, you have to use your data for continuous improvement. Do you have the right IET? If you created an IET and you sit a year later, 2 years later, be honest with yourself. What is the reason why you don't have enrollment? If you don't have enrollment because it's just not an IET that will get jobs in the community and you can't find partners for it, is that the right IET? Or you've been trying to have an IET and yet you can't find an instructor because they don't have that skill set. Then you might go back to the employer and say, what can you do to help us with this? You said you asked us to make this program. I can't find a teacher. Do you have a teacher? You need to help me find a teacher. Or is there other credentialing that is also valuable to your organization that I could modify in just this IET so that I can attain some workforce for you? So those are just some examples of what you do with your data and how you move for continuous improvement. But at the end of the day, your IET program will be as successful as the time you put into it and your energy and your passion for it. I think you can tell myself and Eric, like, we love IET. Like, it's just exciting to me. I've been with it since the implementation of it. I see the outcomes. I see the student success. It'll rejuvenate programs that might be struggling. It does require work. It does require the agency to work together, but if you put in the work, you'll be really happy for the outcome. So that is the last step in our blueprint of IET.
All right, so if you got a chance, please give update your feedback. And it just popped up in your polls and quizzes. And I'd like to promote the next webinar. It's going to be December 3rd for Webinar Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Submitting your IET requests with confidence, updates, and best practices. That is December 3rd at 3 p.m. Eastern time.
And we just want to thank everyone for this opportunity to share our journey on IET and give you a little bit of our content knowledge and expertise in creating and sustaining IETs. And just giving you the 101 so that you can go back and no matter what stage you're at, we believe you can be successful. So thank you again, and we hope that this webinar sparked your interest or your continuation, and we were of help to you. Thank you.